breaking out of the system doesn't feel impossible because it actually is. It feels impossible because everything around you makes it feel that way. That's the difference. Now think about this. From the moment you started understanding the world, you were shown one path, one structure, one way of living, school, work, routine, stability. That was presented to you as normal, not as one option, as the option. And when something is presented like that, you don't question it. You accept it. Now here's where it gets interesting. You don't compare that path to something else because you were never shown something else consistently. So your brain does something automatic. It treats what it sees the most as reality. And once something becomes your reality, everything outside of it feels unrealistic. Now ask yourself this. How many people around you actually live differently? Not talk about it. Live it. Very few. Maybe none. And that's exactly why breaking out feels impossible. Because your reference point is limited. You can't imagine what you don't see. And if you can't imagine it, you won't move toward it. Now here's something deeper. It's not just what you see. It's what you hear. Be realistic. Play it safe. Don't take unnecessary risks. You need stability. Those sentences don't sound negative. They sound responsible, logical, smart. But look closer. They all point in one direction. Stay where you are. Don't step out. Don't break the pattern. Now imagine hearing that for years. From parents, from teachers, from people around you, over and over again. What happens? It becomes your internal voice. You start repeating it to yourself, even when nobody else is saying it. That's how deep it goes. Now breaking out doesn't just mean changing your situation. It means going against your own thinking, against what feels right, against what feels safe. And that's why it feels impossible, because it's not just external resistance. It's internal. Now let me ask you something. When you think about doing something different, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Excitement or doubt? Be honest. Because for most people, it's doubt. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I lose what I have? That's not random. That's conditioning. Your brain is protecting the current system because the current system is known, predictable, safe, even if it's limiting. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't stay in the system because you have to. You stay because leaving it feels uncertain. And uncertainty feels like danger, even when it's not. Now think about this. If someone told you exactly what would happen, if you stepped out, guaranteed success, guaranteed results, would it still feel impossible? Of course not. You would move immediately. So the problem is not ability. It's uncertainty and your tolerance for it. Now here's where it gets real. Most people don't want freedom. They want certainty, even if that certainty limits them. Because certainty feels comfortable. It removes thinking. It removes risk. It removes responsibility. And responsibility is what breaking out actually requires. Now ask yourself this. Are you ready to make decisions without knowing the outcome? Are you ready to move without guarantees? Are you ready to risk what feels stable for something unknown? Because that's the real requirement. Not talent, not intelligence, courage. And most people avoid that, not because they can't do it, but because it feels uncomfortable. Now here's something deeper. The longer you stay in the system, the harder it becomes to leave. Because now, it's not just your routine, it's your identity. This is what I do. This is my life. And once something becomes your identity, breaking out feels like losing yourself. Now think about that. You're not just leaving a system, you're leaving a version of yourself. And that is what makes it feel impossible. Let's go deeper into this. Because what makes it feel impossible is not just what's around you, it's what's already inside you. Years of patterns, years of repetition, years of thinking in a certain way. You don't just follow the system physically, you carry it mentally. Now think about this. When you consider doing something different, something outside the norm, why does it feel so heavy? Why does it feel like such a big step? It's not the action itself, it's what it represents. It represents uncertainty, loss of control, loss of approval, and those things feel dangerous to your mind. Now let me ask you something honestly. If nobody judged you, if nobody had expectations, If nobody reacted at all, would it still feel as hard to break out? Or would it suddenly feel easier? Because that tells you everything. It's not just the system, it's the pressure around it. And that pressure is constant. Now here's something deeper. You've been trained to measure your decisions based on how they look, not how they feel. What will people think? How will this be perceived? Will this make sense to others? And once you start thinking like that, you stop acting freely. You act strategically, but not in your favor, in theirs. Now think about how powerful that is. You limit your own life based on imagined reactions, not real consequences. Imagine ones. Now let's go even deeper. The system doesn't just give you structure. It gives you identity. Your job, your role, your routine. All of that tells you who you are. And once you attach to that, leaving it feels like losing yourself. Not just changing direction, losing identity. Now ask yourself this. Who are you? Without your routine? Without your role? Without the structure you follow every day? Most people don't have an answer. And that's exactly why they stay. Because the unknown version of themselves feels empty, unclear, unstable. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. You are not just afraid of failure. You are afraid of not knowing who you are outside the system. And that fear keeps you in place. Now think about this. The system gives you clarity. You know what to do. You know where to go. You know what's expected. But outside of it, there's no clear path, no instructions, no guarantees. And most people are not used to that. They've spent years being guided. So when that guidance disappears, they freeze. Now let me ask you something directly. Do you actually want freedom? Or do you want structure that feels better? Because real freedom comes with uncertainty. It comes with responsibility. It comes with decisions you have to make on your own. And most people are not ready for that. Not because they can't handle it, but because they've never trained for it. Now here's something deeper. Breaking out doesn't fail because of the outside. It fails because of hesitation. Because you start, and then you doubt. You move, and then you slow down. You take a step, and then you go back. And that pattern kills everything. Now think about this. How many times did you consider doing something different and stopped halfway? Not because it didn't work, but because it felt uncertain. That's the exact moment where most people lose. Now here's the truth. Breaking out is not one big decision. It's a series of small ones. Repeated, consistent, uncomfortable. And if you stop in between, you fall back into the system automatically. Now let me ask you something honestly. Are you actually trying to break out? Or are you just thinking about it? Because those are two completely different things. And deep down, you already know which one it is. Let's be real for a second. You say it feels impossible to break out. But is it really impossible? Or does it just feel uncomfortable? Because those are not the same thing. And most people confuse them. Now think about this. There are people who already did it. They exist. They broke out. They changed direction. They built something different. So it's clearly possible. But for you, it feels impossible. Why? Because of your perspective, your environment, your conditioning. Now ask yourself this. If you saw 10 people around you doing exactly what you want to do, would it still feel impossible? Of course not. It would feel normal. That's how powerful your surroundings are. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. You are measuring what's possible based on what you see every day. And if what you see is limited, your thinking becomes limited. Not because you're incapable, but because your reference point is small. Now let's go deeper. You don't just fear failure. You fear being different. You fear stepping outside the pattern. Because once you do that, you separate yourself from the group. And that creates pressure. Now think about this. Humans are wired to belong, to fit in, to stay connected. So when you go against the system, you feel like you're losing that. Even if nobody says anything, you feel it internally. That tension, that discomfort, that this is not normal feeling. And that feeling is enough to stop most people. Now here's something deeper. You've been trained to trust the system, to believe that it's the right way, that it's safe, that it's reliable. So when you step away from it, it feels like you're doing something wrong, even if logically, you know you're not. That's how deep conditioning goes. Now let me ask you something directly. When you think about leaving the system, what scares you more? Failing? Or people seeing you fail? Be honest. Because for most people, it's the second one. It's not the outcome. It's the perception. And perception controls behavior more than reality. Now think about how powerful that is. You are limiting your life based on what others might think, not what will actually happen. Now here's the truth. Most people don't even care as much as you think. They're focused on their own life, their own problems, their own routines. But your mind makes it bigger, makes it feel like everyone is watching, everyone is judging, everyone is paying attention, and that illusion keeps you in place. Now let's go deeper. Breaking out requires you to act without validation, without approval, without guarantees. And most people are addicted to validation. They want confirmation. They want signs. They want reassurance. But none of that comes first. It comes after you move, after you take the risk, after you commit. Now think about this. If you wait until you feel ready, you will wait forever, because readiness is created through action, not before it. Now here's the uncomfortable part. You don't lack opportunity. You lack commitment to uncertainty, because breaking out means you don't know what happens next. And that is what stops you, not the difficulty, the unknown. Now let me ask you something final for this part. If everything stayed exactly the same, and you never tried to break out, would you regret it? Really think about that, because that answer is more important than anything else. Let's strip this down to the truth. Breaking out doesn't fail because it's impossible. It fails because you hesitate. That's it. Not ability, not opportunity, hesitation. That moment where you think, I could, and then don't. That's where everything stops. Now think about how many of those moments you've had. Moments where you knew, this is what I should do. This is the move. This is the step. And instead, you paused. You delayed. You went back to what's familiar. That's not random. That's a pattern. And that pattern is what keeps you inside the system. Now let me ask you something directly. How many times did you almost do something different? Not fully. Almost. That's where most people live. In almost. Almost starting. Almost changing. Almost breaking out. But never fully committing. And almost leads nowhere. Now here's something deeper. You don't just hesitate once. You build a habit of hesitation. Every time you delay, it becomes easier to delay again. Every time you step back, it becomes easier to step back again, until hesitation becomes your default. And once that happens, breaking out feels impossible, not because it is, but because your behavior is working against you. Now think about this. If every time you had an opportunity, you acted immediately, without overthinking, without waiting, how different would your life be? Completely different. But you don't do that. You wait. You analyze. You overthink. And overthinking kills action. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. You are not stuck in the system. You are reinforcing it. Every time you hesitate, every time you delay, every time you choose what's easier, you're making the system stronger. Now let that sink in, because that changes everything. You're not just inside it. You're supporting it. Now let's go deeper. The system doesn't need to stop you. It just needs to slow you down. Just enough. So you never build momentum. Because momentum is dangerous. Momentum creates change. Momentum creates progress. Momentum breaks patterns. And hesitation kills momentum instantly. Now ask yourself something honestly. When you start something, do you keep going? Or do you slow down at the first sign of resistance? Because that answer explains everything. Now here's something even deeper. You've trained yourself to feel comfortable in hesitation. It feels normal to wait, normal to think, normal to delay. But that normal is exactly what's holding you back. Now think about this. If someone watched your decisions, not your thoughts, not your intentions, your actual decisions, would they say, this person is trying to break out? Or would they say, this person is staying exactly where they are? Be honest, because your actions tell the truth. Now here's the reality. Breaking out requires speed, not rushing, but acting when it matters. Not waiting for the perfect moment, not waiting to feel ready. Moving, even when it's unclear. Now let me ask you something final. What are you waiting for? A sign? Certainty? Confidence? Because none of those come first. They come after you move. And if you don't move, they never come. Let's stop lying for a second. Not to me, to yourself. You say breaking out feels impossible, but the truth is, you're not doing what it takes. Not consistently, not seriously, not fully. You're playing with the idea, thinking about it, talking about it, imagining it, but not executing it. And that's the difference. Now let me hit you with something real. If your life depended on it, would you still hesitate? If someone told you, move now or lose everything, would you still overthink? Of course not. You would act immediately. No delay. No excuses. No, I'm not ready. So what does that tell you? You can act. You just don't. Because it's not urgent enough for you. And that's the truth. Now think about how dangerous that is. Your life doesn't feel urgent to you. So you delay it. You postpone it. You push it back. Again, and again, and again, until years are gone. Not because you failed, but because you never treated it seriously. Now let me ask you something directly. What exactly are you waiting for? A perfect moment? It doesn't exist. More confidence? It comes after action. More clarity? You get it by moving. So what's left? Nothing. Just your decision. And you keep avoiding it. Now here's the brutal truth. You don't break out. Because you don't want it enough. You want the idea of it. The image. The result. But not the process. Because the process is uncomfortable. It's uncertain. It's lonely. It's hard. And you avoid that. So you stay? Now think about this. Every single day, you are choosing your current life. Not once. Every day. Through your actions. Through your decisions. Through what you do and what you don't do. Now let that sink in. You are not stuck. You are choosing this. Right now. And that's what makes it brutal. Because if you're choosing it, you can't blame anything else. Not the system. Not your situation. Not your past. You. Now let me go even deeper. You're not just afraid of failing. You're afraid of fully trying. Because if you give everything, and it doesn't work, you have no excuse left. So what do? You hold back. You stay in the middle. Not fully committed. Not fully out. Just enough effort to feel like you're trying. But not enough to actually change anything. That's where most people live. In half effort, half decisions, half commitment, and half commitment creates zero results. Now think about this. How many times did you start something, but didn't go all in? You gave some effort, then slowed down, then stopped, and told yourself, I tried. No, you didn't. You tested it. And testing is not the same as committing. Now here's the truth. Breaking out requires full commitment, not 50%. Not when you feel like it. Every day, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unclear, even when it feels wrong. And that's exactly why you're not doing it. Because you're protecting comfort, more than you're chasing change. Now let me ask you one thing. Be real. Do you actually want to break out? Or do you just like thinking about it? Because those are two completely different realities. And your life right now shows the answer. This is where everything becomes clear. No more theory. No more ideas. Just reality. Right now, your life is a direct result of what you repeat. Not what you want. Not what you plan. What you repeat. Every day. And if you look at your life honestly, you already know the pattern. You wake up. You think about change. You feel that pressure for a moment. And then, you go back to what's familiar. That's the cycle. And that cycle is stronger than your intentions. Because repetition always wins. Now think about this. You don't need more information. You've heard enough. You've thought enough. You've planned enough. You know what to do. You've known it. So stop pretending this is about knowledge. It's not. It's about action. Now here's the part that hits hardest. If nothing changes, it's not because it couldn't. It's because you didn't. Let that sink in. Because that removes everything. All excuses. All distractions. All external reasons. What's left? You. Your decisions. Your actions. Now ask yourself this. If someone copied your exact behavior, your exact habits, your exact level of effort, for the next 5 years, what would their life look like? Be honest. Because that's your future. Not what you hope. What you're building. Right now. Now here's the truth most people avoid. Breaking out is simple. Not easy. Simple. You do what needs to be done. Repeatedly. Without stopping. without negotiating, without waiting. That's it. But you don't do it. Because it's uncomfortable. Because it's uncertain. Because it requires you to change. And change is what you've been avoiding this whole time. Now let me make it very clear. Nothing is holding you back, except your pattern, not the system, not your situation. Your pattern, the way you act, the way you decide, the way you respond. That's it. And until that changes, nothing else will. Now think about this. You don't suddenly wake up and break out. You break out the moment you stop repeating the same behavior, the moment you act differently, even once. Because that one action breaks the pattern. And once the pattern breaks, direction changes. Now here's the final truth. You are either reinforcing your current life, or you are changing it. There is no neutral. Every decision counts. Every action matters. Every moment you delay strengthens the same reality. Now everything comes down to one thing. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now. Do you continue this pattern and accept exactly where it leads? Or do you interrupt it and accept what comes with that? Because both paths are clear. Both outcomes are predictable. And both are your responsibility. No one is coming. No one is pushing you. No one is forcing you. That's why most people never do it. Because it's on them. And now, it's on you. You see it. You feel it. You understand it. So now there's only one question left. What are you going to do? Because whatever you choose, you're already becoming it.